In the previous episode of building a realistic model airport, we designed, 3D printed and assembled a terminal, and we fixed some mistakes in the paint and markings that we made in the other episodes. If you haven't seen the other 3 episodes, please check them out before you get into this one, because I will explain from A to Z how we got until this point. Now let's get into the 4th episode, as today we're going to do the finishing touch and finish the airport. The to-do list of this video consists of adding extra ground markings, adding rubber tire marks on the ground, adding a few plants and flowers, and making light into the terminal. Let's start off with the making of light into the terminal. This is a 3mm LED light, and my idea is to connect multiple of these together to create a LED strip effect. To do that, I'm going to use a soldering iron and some wires. And what you see me doing here is inexperienced me trying to test if this LED light is actually working, but I didn't know yet that 9 volts is a bit too much for this tiny light, so my whole room smelled like smoke and fire. But lessons have been learned, and I chose to use a coin cell battery instead, because the voltage of this one is just 3 volts, which is perfect for these lights. My idea is to connect these 3mm LED lights individually to the coin cell battery. I soldered wires to the LEDs to make them longer, so I could position the coin cell in a central position in the terminal and then make the lights run from the central position to all the sides from the terminal. The soldering process took me about 2 hours, but after it was done, this is what it looked like. I have soldered 7 3mm lights to the coin cell battery. I marked out 7 positions where the lights were going to be placed. 4 on the bottom layer and 3 lights on the top layer of the terminal. As you can see, the terminal is falling apart a bit, but that's no problem. We'll just glue it together once we finish the lights. To install all the lights, I hand drilled a hole at every position through which the cables would run. But as I found out after drilling 2 holes, it was quite a lot of work, I just thought, why not drill one big hole through which all the cables would run. I did this with the electric drill, which was literally 30 seconds of work. After drilling this hole, I put through all the cables, which was quite a tight fit, but it fit perfectly. And then this is what it looks like now. It is quite a mess of cables, so I hope it will work and not be too messy after installing 7 of these lights. Here is how the terminal looks after installing all the lights and connecting them to the battery. So what we'll do now is we'll add a sheet of baking paper in front of all the windows. This way the light will dissolve and it will create an effect that there is light everywhere in the terminal. Here is an idea of how the bottom layer of the terminal would look like when the baking paper is installed, but I'm really not happy with how it looks. You can almost see the individual LED lights through the baking paper and the light doesn't spread out over the whole width of the terminal. To create the effect that I desire, I need to at least add 10 more LED lights, which is an enormous amount of work. So, change of plans. I searched in every corner of my room and I found a LED strip. This is so much easier. You just connect it with USB to the power socket, switch it on with the remote control, and you have light. You even have different colors of lights and you can fade between them. Another great thing with LED strips is that they just stick to everything because they have a sticky bottom. Here I simply remove the blue protective layer and stick the LED strip to the inside of my terminal. After the LED strip has been installed, I heat up my soldering iron to create a hole for the wire to run through at the back of the terminal. Because the plastic melts so easily, I just put my soldering iron down on the terminal and here a hole is created. This whole installation of the LED strip didn't take me more than 20 minutes. Now that the LED strip is installed, we can install the baking paper once again. Using scissors, I cut out the strip that would fit just about, and then I put some super glue on the inside of all the windows. Then I was able to install the baking paper on the inside of the windows, but this was quite an annoying process because the terminal was both curved and baking paper takes very long to stick well to the inside of the windows. Once I thought the glue was dried, the baking paper came loose again and I could start right over again. But after some trial and error, the baking paper stick to the windows and it was done. I think this looks absolutely incredible and this is how it looks by day, but at night this will look 10 times better. Now the terminal was done and we can get started with adding the fine details onto the airport. Here we are on the aircraft stand, and the first detail I am going to add is a marking of a fuel point. Here, fuel can be extracted from the ground and can be put in the fuel tank of the aircraft. Using a pencil, I first marked the position where the fuel extraction point was going to be placed. Then, using a black Uniposca paint pen, I created a circle which represents the fuel hydrant. After adding the fuel hydrant at all the 5 gates, I had to let them dry for some time before adding the red markings, so I thought I added the bus stops. I marked my bus stops using some zigzag yellow lines, which have the length of the bus. And I positioned the bus stop in a place where it doesn't conflict with any other GSC. After the black paint has dried, it is time to add the red markings that indicate where the fuel hydrant is. And caution needs to be used around it. For this, I used the red Uniposca PC3 marker that I used in all the previous episodes as well. Because the lines are so short, I chose not to use a ruler, but use my bare hand instead, which worked well. And after adding all these markings, the gates are finally done, at least for the marking part. I am now going to detail the grass that we have added on the side of the airport. I have ordered 2 types of flowers, and I will link them in the description. And I will be putting these onto the grass. I glued the flowers down using some standard glue, and a set of tweezers helped me out very much to position and grab the flowers. I put all the different colors randomly under and it gives off an amazing effect. Adding the flowers took me about 10 minutes, and after the glue was dried and the flowers were down, this is how it looked like. The fine details are now almost ready, but there is only one thing left to do, which is adding all the rubber tire marks. To add all those tire marks, I am going to use black paint and my airbrush. And after putting the paint into my airbrush and testing a bit to see height and speed were good enough so I could gradually add some paint, I was ready to carefully add the markings to the airport. I want to add the paint very gradual because if I make a mistake, it is really hard to turn it around. I started with the taxiway, and everywhere where the wheels of the aircraft touched the ground I added some paint. So obviously that's on the yellow line, but also left and right of the line you need to add paint because there the other landing gear is touching the ground. Next I went to the aircraft stands and I did the same thing again, which I did to the taxiway. I visualized about the line the aircraft would be taking from the taxiway to its stand, and I went over it using the airbrush. If you are thinking, I don't have an airbrush, how can I do this? This airbrush that I use only cost me 35 to 40 euros and I will link it in the description. This is one of the first times I'm using the airbrush and it's very easy to do, very easy to use, and I can definitely recommend it. The GSC or ground service equipment also have rubber tires, so also need rubber markings. To make these markings, I let some tiny drops of paint onto the surface and using a cloth I spilled them out, which created some awesome markings. I repeated this at all stands and at every parking position, and in the end it absolutely looks great. I'm very happy with the result. And the only real investment you have to do is your time. Because to make this whole episode, it took me at least 2 days or just about 10 hours to create all the fine details. Now that the last markings have been added, the airport is done and ready to be presented to you guys. Dear Model Aviation fans, are you ready for the big review? In the next episode I will set the airport up with all the airplanes, ground service equipment and everything to make it look like the most realistic model airport. For now I'd like to thank you for watching and your support. If you have any questions, leave them below in the comments. I would really appreciate it if you would consider to like and subscribe, and I see you in the next video.